Hello, Nathaniel Gibson here, bringing to you my Week 7 policy analysis outline for a critical assignment. For the sake of time, I'm going to be jumping right into my policy background, my stakeholders, my policy alternatives, the evaluation, and then finally wrapping up with my final recommendations. So starting off with my problem analysis, in Riverside County in 2017, there were 73 firearm-related homicides. In data pulled from the Centers for Disease Control website in 2020, you can see that 54 of these fatalities were concentrated in males between the ages of 15 and 44, and females were 19 between the ages of 15 and 44. The data you will also notice is focused primarily on males between the age group previously mentioned and is thus showing a high tendency for violence in the male adolescent community. The data is categorized to include the following firearm types: handguns, rifles, shotguns, and then also miscellaneous unspecified firearm discharges. Moving on to stakeholders, there are numerous policy and nonprofit groups who have a vested interest in seeing the reduction of violent crime and firearm-related incidents in the community, not to mention law enforcement and other safety personnel. However, some of the larger stakeholders who could be observed to be impacted by and even influenced by policy outcomes at all levels include the Institute for Economics and Peace, the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine, the Advanced Peace Fellowship Program, and also the National Governors Association. Jumping now into the policy alternatives section, we have the option of utilizing existing legislation to combat the community and firearm-related violence that's going on. A focus of that must include the partnership that the state has with local governments on the Real Public Safety Plan, which was implemented by Governor Newsom in 2021. The anticipated outcomes of this policy are fairly new and still being explored due to the recency of this program, but its objectives include a very drastic increase in the size of law enforcement personnel, and then also a targeted approach to reducing violent crime in local communities. Policy Alternative 2 includes the expansion of Penal Code 245-A-2 of the State of California to include penalties for the convictions of all firearm types and not just larger machine guns and shotguns. The anticipated outcomes from this policy can be compared to similar impacts from the Florida Felony Firearm Law of 1975, which included an increase in felony assault charges and then also a reduction in the total firearm homicide rates across the state of Florida. Policy Alternative 3 would recommend the creation of a locally run government task force called the Riverside Community Violence Intervention Task Force to partner alongside with existing organizations and nonprofits, which would look to target at-risk youth who are prone in local schools and the Riverside community to possible future violence. The fiscal impacts of this policy would have to be adopted into local police funding, but also could be combined with funding from public schools, as this program would be integrated the most in the learning environment of the classroom. So moving on to the evaluation matrix, the goal of evaluating all of these policy recommendations would be to observe the maximum efficient option moving forward in these different outcomes. And so finding out how the programs aided in reducing the number of violent crimes, which is the problem, which included the abuse and intended assault with a firearm. The methodology that I would be using for this analysis analysis and evaluation would be evaluating policy outcomes through an unadjusted autoregressive integrated moving average model. And this model uses time series data, usually from a longitudinal analysis design, in order to understand data sets and or predict future trends in violent crime. In this research, a model is usually considered autoregressive if it predicts future values based on past values. So taking a look at past data in order to predict future outcomes. So in conclusion, my policy recommendation moving forward would be to pursue policy alternatives number 1 and 2. Policy alternative 3 is an approach that would cost the city and its safety personnel considerable funds in implementing it, and it wouldn't conduce a change in enough to warrant the existing funding for local safety and services to be drastically changed. So policy alternatives 1 and 2 offer simple yet effective solutions which have existing evaluative options and also provide accepted options moving forward for integrating these services into the local community.